Hello everyone! After a few years of meaning to, I finally got around to rereading I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, and since we talk so much about classic science fiction around here, I thought you might be interested in a review of it. I, Robot is a pillar of the genre, and the list of films, TV shows, books, short stories, among other things, that owe it a debt of gratitude for their own existence is extensive. Isaac Asimov is a giant in the world of science fiction, one of the big three, along with Robert C. Clarke. Obviously, I meant to say Arthur C. Clarke and Robert A. Heinlein. They weren't creators of the genre, but they ran where H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, etc. walked, achieving legendary status as the top sci-fi bestsellers of the 20th century. To call Asimov a prolific writer is an understatement, and I, Robot is arguably the most famous of his works. It was published as a book in December 1950, but the stories it contains, held together by a framing device, were published in magazines throughout the 1940s. He didn't invent the word robot. That term was coined by Czech writer Karl Kopek in his 1920 play RUR, or Rossum's Universal Robots. I read that last winter, and you can find a link to a video where I talked about it in the description below. Asimov's work, however, really, in my opinion at least, helped make robot a common and significant term in technical and academic fields and in pop culture. He goes a step further, though, and introduces a couple key concepts that became tenets of the genre, staples you can find pervading in many a science fiction work today. One is the concept of the positronic brain. Now, if you ask me to give a scientific explanation of what a positronic brain is without reading an excerpt from the book, I don't think I can do it. It has something to do with positrons. Is it feasible? Would it really work? I have no idea. What I do understand is that possession of a positronic brain is what gives a robot the ability to think and reason and, in a sense, to feel. The other huge contribution Asimov made here to science fiction is his 3 laws of robotics. I don't want to mess this up, so I'm going to read them. First law, a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Second law, a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Third law, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. These robotic laws form the foundation of the book. Many stories have to do with troubleshooting and working out the kinks in new robot designs, figuring out why A causes B to happen, and so on. Every conflict has something to do with one or two or all 3 of these robotic laws, be it in conjecture or in practice. That is essentially what iRobot is, a series of scenarios in which we learn how those laws are applied, as well as how they may break down or backfire. I mentioned at the beginning that this was a reread. I first read iRobot in 1924. Why did I start to say 1924? I first read iRobot in 2014, and I recall that I liked it a lot. Liked it so much that I was looking forward to revisiting it. I decided to look up my old notes and found that I had described it as creepy in a calm, cool, unnerving way, an explanation of a future given in bits and pieces, made believable because it starts with the possible and accelerates. Humans clearly cannot control the robots and do not understand everything about them, like how did that one end up being able to read minds? But nobody does anything about it. Only 2 guys in the whole story are normal, Greg and Mike, and they just get moved around by the system. Disturbing main character, Coldfish, leads to disturbing non-resolution. Curious about Asimov's beliefs. 2014 seems like a long time ago now, and I think I've gotten a little better at summarizing my opinions of things. This time I read more critically or analytically, trying to separate Asimov's view of his robots and what he intended the reader to think from my own predispositions. Notice in those first impressions that I used words like creepy, unnerving, disturbing. That was me bringing my feelings into it. Not my baggage. I don't have any baggage regarding robots. I have certain feelings about these concepts. But it is not Asimov's view that his robots are creepy or that the situations are disturbing, although there's frequent acknowledgement of dangerous implications should certain scenarios go unresolved. What he envisions is a world where robots and then machines usher in a golden age for the human race. But those in his world who find robots creepy or disturbing and want to get rid of them, they're the bad guys. So, not sure where that puts me. I'm undecided if I, Robot should be classified as a novel or as a short story collection because it's kind of both. The framing device weaves all the stories together so there's a cohesion and a progression, a movement forward in time and achievement. The central human figure is Dr. Susan Calvin, an old woman in the framing device who's being interviewed by an eager journalist. She's the leading robo-psychologist of United States Robots and Mechanical Men, Inc., and I don't know how to feel about her because she's detached, she's cold, she's more robotic than human in some ways. She's a strange person, and everyone who works with her is kind of put off by her. She has much greater sympathy and liking for the robots than she does her fellow humans, and I just find it difficult to like her. I'm not sure that we're supposed to like her. The other prominent recurring characters are Powell and Donovan, two exasperated field technicians who keep getting called in to test new robots. They have a tendency to get sarcastic with each other, and their personalities, especially Donovan's, are exaggerated almost to the point of becoming cartoonish. Through them, Asimov introduces slang and exclamations that are unique to his world, although I will say the dialogue more often than not sounds like it was written in the 40s, and through them he lets a little corny humor leak through, though not much. The book is comprised of 9 stories, each one about 20-25 pages long. Just about every story has to do with a new robot and a dilemma, specifically a robot puzzling out an ethical dilemma that threatens to fry its brain. Asimov's inventiveness is brilliant, and the stories are clever. My 3 favorites were number 3, Reason, where Powell and Donovan encounter a robot that is able to think and reason, perhaps a little too well, pondering the logic of its existence and reaching an alarming conclusion regarding itself and its human masters. Number 5, Liar, where a robot appears to have gained the ability to read minds. Whether it was Asimov's design or not, a question often lurking in the back of my mind is this just a malfunction, or is something sinister afoot? Does this robot have malicious intent? Is it going to try to take over the world? I find this story to be the most intense, and in my opinion, it benefits from being the most personal for Susan's character. And number 6, Little Lost Robot, is another tense one where a robot that has undergone a secret reprogramming goes missing to prove a point. Asimov did go on to write other books about robots in this universe to make it a series. These books feature an anti-robot detective who is assigned to investigate a murder with a robotic partner. It also deals with tensions between inhabitants of Earth and spacers, people who have left Earth to settle on galactic colonies. I've never heard anybody say anything about these books, but they sound interesting to me. I definitely would be willing to give the first one a try. For anyone wondering how much this book, I, Robot, has to do with the 2004 film of the same name, I haven't seen more than a few minutes of it, so I don't know, but I do know it takes a few characters and concepts from the book And the screenplay was written by Jeff Vintar and Akiva Goldsman from Vintar's Screen Story, which was suggested by Asimov's book. Now, it seems to me this is one of those movies that people argue about. People who like sci-fi movies like the movie. People who like science fiction literature, they don't like the movie so much because it's more of an action thriller kind of thing, I think. Now, if you've watched certain other science fiction related videos of mine, you probably know already that I'm not really in favor of a world filled with robots who do everything for us. And I've got several reasons for that. First, as well built as a machine may be, mechanical errors are inevitable. I could go off on a rant about that, but I won't. Second, I suspect that full-blown automation would only make our society more lazy and self-indulgent and complacent, and therefore weaker, than it already is. I could go on a rant about that as well, but I won't. Third, a machine or a robot doesn't just come into existence by itself. It's made by a person. A human, or a group of humans, devises that system, and humans, well, they can't all be trusted. That's my true concern. I'm not really scared of AI becoming sentient and trying to take over the world, though it's fun to freak yourself out contemplating it. But I am concerned that the kinds of people who fund certain projects and aggressively push widespread implementation have ulterior motives. What's just as scary is that the people end up so confused and distracted that they just let things happen, unaware of what the consequences may be. I enjoy several of the chapters individually, but in the latter portion of the book, I find myself pulling away. Asimov sees his possible future as a good thing, and I do not. What he's cautiously optimistic about sounds terrible to me. He seemed to believe letting machines take control was the way to go. I just can't get on board with that. So, at a certain point, our paths diverge. The book's a solid read, though, barring a couple slow spots where characters just talk and talk. I like the ideas and Asimov's clear, accessible way of explaining things. He doesn't change my mind on some points, but his exploration of robotics, machines, and especially robot-human interactions and robotic humanity is fascinating and compelling and thought-provoking, no matter what stance you take. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you've read iRobot, do share what you thought of it in the comments below, and I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.